For motorsports to grow, we need to double the size of the audience. And to double the size of the audience, it'd be good to double the size of the field. If we can get as many women to race as there are men who are racing, then we can potentially double the size of the off-road industry. And so that sort of sets us up for this next session. Tiffany's the best person to host this one because she understands the genre of motorsports and how it's been very male dominated in the past, but now how it's actually attracting more women. Tiffany, why don't you help us understand the benefits of sponsoring women and the benefits of sponsoring or brands that want to approach the market by going through women in motorsports?
Well, thank you so much, Alex. And you're absolutely correct. When we look at motorsports, sometimes, we don't see a lot of females out there, but we are out there. We're doing everything that we can. And I've always told people, if you want to work in motorsports, you have to work hard. You want to be a female in motorsports, you have to work twice as hard. You want to be a respected female in motorsports, you're going to have to work 3 times as hard. And I do have 3 females across the board on different things. And I see Corey Weller right there. Corey, every time I've always chatted with you and everything, it's always been face to face, usually on a podium somewhere, because you've just been dominating forever. And, based out of Arizona, you started Weller Racing in 2006, but your career really started before all of that. So walk me a little bit through it. I know that you started on 4 wheels. You did quads in motocross, and that's really kind of how you got out there. And then once UTVs kind of took over, you were like, hey, this is something I want to do. I'm out in the desert. I think we can dominate at this. So walk me through a little bit about your career and what it's like to be a female. I know most of us were like, hey, as soon as we get behind the wheel, that vehicle has no idea who we are. But you, myself, Mia Chapman, Shelby Hall, they'll all be on here. There are some disadvantages and some trials and tribulations we've had to go through. So walk me through your career just a little bit.
Okay, I want to test that out first. I don't do a lot of Zoom, so yeah, I did start off racing motocross, and just on a whim. I was 29 when I started racing, and I hadn't ridden anything ever either. So I was going by myself out there. So I thought, well, the safest place to go for me is probably to a track somewhere where if something happens to me, I wreck or something, I have people there to help me. So that's kind of how I wound up at the track in the first place. And I loved it. Like right from the start, I loved that adrenaline rush. I loved not having a clue what I was doing, but it was so exciting. And, just being in the dirt and having all the power, and yeah, it was amazing. So, I just started racing kind of right out of the gate. And, I learned to ride while I learned to race. So it was really cool. Yeah. And then, we did that. I met my husband at the racetrack, at second quad race too, I think. And, we hit it off from there, and we're friends for a long time before we ever got together. And then, short course racing came along, and, now we have an opportunity to race with a cage, because we've seen a lot of our friends get hurt. Motocross is not a safe sport, so to speak. There's a lot of dangers with that. And, we wanted to kind of do the same thing, but in a safer way. So short course is basically racing motocross in a safer way. So just took to that like crazy, because it was all the excitement and all the fun of motocross. But again, you have a cage now, so when you hit the ground, it's not quite as painful. So yeah, it was very cool. And then the whole UTV thing just took off, obviously.
and talking about that, your first short course race, 2007, you're out there, you're still learning, you're trying to do everything, starting in 2001 with motocross. You've had a few years under your belt to really kind of see what it was. How did you really get that first sponsorship as a female in a sport that was just really starting to come to its own? We see things now. We have 100+ racers in different classes racing things like the Cal 300, racing things like the Mint 400, the Lucas era, the Champ era, even the Core era back in the day. How do you see all of this? And how did you get that first sponsorship?
I got my first sponsorship, and kind of what I tell people is, I basically had to max out all of my credit cards to race my first year in short course. And that was in core. That was in the super stock class. I raced with Luke Johnson, actually. But I didn't have sponsors. So I used all the money I could. I maxed out all my cards, and I just got myself out there. Because I think you have to invest in yourself before somebody else is going to invest in you. You have to show a presence somewhere before somebody even knows who you are. So I did that. And my first year racing core, I actually did get a couple sponsors. As I worked my way through the field, I think I got my first podium that year. I met some people in the industry. Had a suspension sponsor come on board. XMF was one of my first suspension sponsors, and HJC helmets walked up to me towards the end of that season and said, hey, we want to sponsor you with a helmet. Are you interested? And that's kind of how that all started. But you do need to invest in yourself a little bit, get yourself out there. You can't expect a company to sponsor you if they don't even know what you're about.
I completely agree with you. I always tell everybody, if you're not going to believe in yourself, nobody else is going to be. You've got to be that biggest cheerleader, because if you don't believe, how is anybody ever going to believe in you? You got to put out there. Yeah. And, we have another person, Mia Chapman. Mia Chapman's here. And unlike your story, Mia started out super, super young. Welcome, Mia. Mia, you've been racing for the last 15 years. You just turned 21. So you have been in a vehicle of some sort for majority of your life, starting out with mod carts, and you created that show and you were on that show, Mod Kids. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing, because we just, had a chance to talk to Corey. She started when she was 29. You started when you were 6. What's the big difference there?
Yeah, no, I started racing when I was 6, which is super young, and it's a little hard to remember quite everything that happened. But yeah, my dad came from racing dirt bikes and quads, just for fun. And so once they had me, my dad thought it'd be something cool to do with the family. And mom definitely said no to dirt bikes, a little too dangerous for her. So we found something called trophy carts at, I think it was a local car show. And so, I kind of piqued an interest in it a little bit, and my dad bought me one, and it showed up at the house the following Christmas. And so that's just kind of where it started. We started going out to the sand dunes to get, me comfortable in the car, to see if I even liked it, and got comfortable in it, ended up loving it. And so he entered me in my first race. And back then, it wasn't as expensive as it is now to race, especially with the series I was doing. So that's something we started doing on our own at first. And for the first year, that's kind of what we did. And then I believe going into my second year, I want to say, I got my first championship. And that's really when it lit the fire into me. And that's when I was like, this is really what I want to do. Like, this is awesome.
Well,
and so we buckled.
Yeah, no. And going about that, sorry to cut you off, but talking about getting that first win, getting that, I've always said, getting that first win, it breeds confidence. And it gave you the confidence to become the first female to win, really, first female athlete on 4 wheels in the USA. You're wearing that Red Bull hat. We've seen you at the scrambles. I've seen you race. It's been amazing. When you were just in Alaska, you were out there. You were leading ahead of Seth Quintero, AJ Jones, and you had a broken axle and you had no idea, but yet you were still driving out there. And as soon as you came out and you took that Red Bull helmet off, people said, I cannot believe that's a female out there. But that also goes to show that once you get behind the wheel, they have no idea. And you went out there and drove. Talking about being a Red Bull athlete, how did that come about? How did you get that opportunity to showcase to Red Bull what you could do?
Yeah, so Red Bull approached me when I was 15, and I believe I was still doing mod carts at the time. I was doing some training with one of their athletes, Ricky Johnson, and he was helping coach me, and because my car was a little bit on the older side, so he installed a front brake in it to help me kind of rotate the car. So he's helping me figure that out and stuff. And, at the time, Red Bull was looking for, a young female athlete. They didn't have very many of them, especially, in off-road on 4 wheels. And so, we got our first meeting set up, and I did that. And at the time, I was still a minor. So my dad, accompanied me to all of them. And so I had my first meeting. After that, I didn't hear anything after that, which was kind of heartbreaking, because I was like, man, I really wanted this to happen. But little did I know, behind the scenes, my dad was, talking back and forth with them, him and my mom. And so they, discussed the details, got it figured out on their side. And I think it was like a year later, maybe under a year, at a Crandon off-road race. I was there racing mod carts, and my dad, had mentioned, he's like, hey, you want to go to Bryce's pit, Bryce Menzies, to check out his new car he had. And I had like a bad day in practice, and I was like, no, I don't really want to go. Like, I just want to get this figured out. And so he like convinced me to go over there. And so we go over there, was talking to Bryce a little bit. He was and still is someone I look up to very much. So that was a pretty cool moment. And then he asked if we want to go take a ride like on the racetrack, like in his new car. And I was like, absolutely. And so he went out on the track, took a ride, and he stopped on, I think it was like the front table. And like he was like, all right, let's get out, let's talk a little bit. And so like we got out of the car, all these cameras start walking up, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, what are they filming with him? And so like Bryce walked around to the back of his car, and he picked up like a helmet bag and was just holding it. And I was like, oh, cool. Like they're going to announce something, or, something like that. And so he like pulls it off and he hands me my helmet. And he's like, welcome to the family. Like, we're super happy to have you. And I was like, I thought he wanted me to hold his helmet. Like, it just didn't click in my head at the time that was going on. And then it finally clicked. Helmet. Yeah. I was like, wow, I'm clueless over here. But yeah, it was so surreal. It was something that I had been working for like my whole career leading up to that. I put in a lot of hard work, a lot of effort on our side of things, kind of lead up to that point. And yeah, that's kind of where it started.
Well, talking about that, Mia, you're one of the youngest Red Bull athletes, especially being a female. And what do you think that it really takes as somebody under the age of 18, 21? Like you said, your dad always had to be there. So somebody who is going through the same things, they're 15, 16, they really want to get that deal, but obviously their parents have to be about it. What do you recommend, or what do you suggest to anybody that is trying to do that when they're underage? Like, is there something that, hey, this is what you should talk to your dad about, your parents about? This is something, let them know what you want to do. How did you navigate it being under 18, but yet being able to get this Red Bull deal?
Luckily for me, my dad knew a lot about the race industry. And so he helped me kind of navigate that and, teach me important lessons to go about getting sponsors. It takes a little bit when you're starting out in your career, especially to get those kind of sponsorships. And like Corey said, you really have to invest in yourself. And if it's something, serious you want to do and make a career out of, invest in yourself and put yourself out there, really. I mean, branding yourself well, going out and meeting people, the social media content you put out, just be mindful of what you're putting out and, just kind of stuff like that.
Well, and going off of that, Mia, before I head over to Shelby, you grew up with social media. I'm about to age myself. I graduated high school without social media, so I've been very, very lucky, but you've grown up in it. You've utilized it. You've used it as a tool for marketing to get you to that next level. As a person who had to deal with that, you suggest be careful what you put out there because it's always going to be out there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would definitely say so, especially when you're at public events. Just always be mindful of what you're doing and have, positive energy. You never know who's watching and you never know who you're going to meet. That's definitely one of the biggest things I've learned in this industry. No matter like where you go, especially at a race event, you're always going to meet someone and someone's always going to be watching. So I think definitely just present yourself well.
Thank you, Mia. All right, we're going to head over to Shelby Hall. Now, we've talked to somebody who started their career when they were 29. We saw somebody who started their career when they were 6. Now we're going to talk to Shelby Hall, who is a 3rd-generation off-road racer. And Shelby and I have had many, many times to talk. And if you know the last name Hall, of course, you know about her grandfather and off-road Hall of Famer, Rod Hall. So Rod Hall has done so much, Shelby, for this industry. I have goosebumps. You can't tell right now underneath my blazer, but the first time I met you, you were just Shelby to me. And I know that you, talking to tons of people, Rod was just your papa. That's who he was to you. You didn't realize how influential he was in this industry. So being a 3rd-generation person who has raced, Baja 1000, a lot of desert racing, of course, an OG in the Rebel Rally, and now a part of Ford Performance on the Broncos side as an ambassador for them. What does this all mean to you? Because you're continuing the Hall legacy.
It's been a wild ride for sure. Growing up with a family, just being fully surrounded by a family in off-road. That was what we did. That was the regular, it's hanging out in the desert, it's down in Baja. it's missing weddings, it's, you know, missing all the regular life stuff because we're off-roading. And although that was instrumental in where I am today, you know, it also made things, there was a time when I was pretty like, what do I do? When my grandfather retired from racing, and that was who I primarily raced with for many years, I had to really learn how to build those relationships as Shelby Hall and really be able to utilize what my family had created, but to pave my own path so that people started to recognize and respect me not only as a female, but as that third generation, that I have something to offer more than just a last name.
Well, and going off of that, we always look, and sometimes being a female, especially third generation, they're like, well, Shelby just got this because her grandfather's Rod. Shelby just had this, but you've proven yourself time and time again, winning your class at the Rebel Rally, having this Ford Bronco performance team. And now I know that we just spoke. Who is your newest sponsor that is a big one that you said you've been dealing with and you've been wanting to get for many, many years, and it finally came together? Who is that, and how did it finally come together for you? What did you have to do?
So I am so excited to say that Jiffy Lube and Pennzoil have just come on board. And, you know, it's like these relationships do not happen overnight. And there is a lot of communicating. There is a lot of no's. There's a lot of having to keep pushing forward and believing in yourself and believing in what you have to offer. Because honestly, I mean, it's been over a year and a half that I first made an introduction with Pennzoil. And, you know, I felt like, oh, this is it, man. This was such a great, we were at the Indy 500 together, and it just felt like, you know, the connection was there. And then crickets. And you, just like Mia said, like, you have to just keep pushing forward. You have to be persistent. And honestly, I feel like that's how I have gotten my biggest sponsorships from Ford Performance. Is, you know, of course, you have to show up on the podium. You have to show up that you have the skill, but you also have to keep knocking on that door because they have a lot going on and they've got a lot of people knocking on their door, and you have to show up to prove why you are different.
Well, and talking about knocking on doors, you know, a lot of people give females, hey, the door was open because she was a female. Of course it was open, but talking about that door, it may have been open, but we still have to continue through it. We still have to walk through that door and show people and to ourselves, first and foremost, ourselves, why that door was open. You know, a lot of people get discouraged, and I'm assuming, you know, like we've talked about, third generation, you have a lot to live up to that Hall name. And with that being said, really, how do you keep everything together? I mean, we all get discouraged from time to time, but knowing there's a reason my partners, my sponsors picked me, there's a reason that they wanted to do that. So from your thoughts, why do you think that sponsors want to have a female voice or a female presence or the branding out there, but showcase, hey, yes, I am a female, but this is more than what I just do?
For me, I'm very targeted with my sponsorships. It's easy to want to just reach out to anybody and everybody that has financial backing or product, or a way to get you in front of the camera. And, you know, all those things, of course, we want and we need for us to flourish. But I do not want to be affiliated with a company that doesn't truly believe in a female in motorsports. You know, there has been a big push recently for, you know, inclusion and diversity. And it is easy for a female to be chosen to mark that box. But that sucks as the athlete who just has the box marked, because we need just as much support, if not more, than a male athlete. Because like you said, man, we have to work twice as hard. Our mistakes are under a microscope. And, you know, we have to partner with companies who want to lift us up. And I mean, BF Goodrich Tires is they are my family. They are a huge supporter of mine and family to me because, you know, they really make an effort to cheer for me really loudly and lift me up as a female and an athlete.
I agree with you. You know, BF Goodrich Tires is a big partner of mine as well. And I don't race, but I go wheeling. I do the lifestyle part. I know that everybody has seen that red Jeep drive across the country from time to time, show up at different places. And I'm on the other side. I always joke, hey, I've seen a lot of podiums and I've never raced, but usually it's because I have that microphone in my hand. We're going to head back over to Corey Weller for a quick second. And Corey, talking about that, 3 amazing women within this panel, all different backgrounds, all different lifestyles, all different starting points. And as somebody like yourself, you said you started when you were 29. How do you feel about that? Because, you know, you and I are around the same age. And with that being said, it's a little harder for us. We had to learn the social media. We had to learn what people were going for. You do have Weller Racing. And so I know that you see what other people are doing. So Corey, as yourself, really, where do you think that sponsorships and sponsoring women is going for the future for 2024, 25, beyond, and especially with social media coming such a big play?
I do think it's definitely changed a lot over the last 10 or 15 years. You know, before social media became a thing, I just wanted to race. I just wanted to go fast and race and get dirt in my face. And I just had that drive to be on the track. I didn't really think beyond that at all. With the advent of social media, you know, when I got into the Pro 4 and it got out there, I was definitely surprised by the fact that there's this whole other element now. You know, now there's girls looking at you and anybody, you know, they're looking at you as a mentor, or, you know, they want to do what you do. And they are watching you, like what Mia said, you know, you have to be very aware of what you're saying, what you're doing, and how you're presenting yourself. Because now, whether you want to be or not, you're probably a role model to somebody or multiple people. So yeah, it's made it easier, I feel, on the sponsorship side. You know, I'm in a unique position because we also do sponsor, as well as racing, we sponsor drivers. And I do go to social media when I look at someone, you know, for potential sponsorship. It is a big deal. Social media is such a huge way to get a brand name out in front of the masses. And that's super important. On the flip side of it, it's social media. So not growing up with it, I don't feel that I use it the best, because for me, it's such an effort for me. I'm everything I do is organic. The way I've gained my sponsors has just been organic. I don't use social media the way I should use it because it's hard for me to do that. And I'm in awe of the women that can. You know, I still feel like I'm learning from everybody that I watch. But it does make it easier to put yourself out there. It makes it easier to show people who you are, what you're about, show companies what you can do. If you can have, you know, the numbers, obviously that's a big deal. But yeah, it's definitely, I don't want to say it's easier, because we still all have to go the track and do all the hard work. But I do think that it has helped a lot to be able to just get yourself in front of not only, you know, your fans and have those numbers, but also in front of the companies that they're watching.
You're absolutely correct. And now moving over to Mia Chapman. Mia, you grew up with all of this. You had an entire film crew around you for a long time with the show that you were doing. So as somebody who is growing up in this generation and has grown up in this generation, where do you think social media is going to take us, especially for the female groups that, like, you know, like Shelby was saying, we're under microscopes. And like what you were saying, we're always watching this. And I know that for you 3 women, you do not push that female narrative. And I love that. And a lot of us that are in off-road and motorsports, we don't. But for you, you grew up in all of this. How do you navigate social media, and how do you feel being so young, but such a big role model? Like, I've seen little girls come up to you at the scramble races and say, Mia, we love you. How do you navigate social media, sponsorship, and keeping it all together?
Yeah, I think it's definitely more of a normal thing for me, just because I started so young. And it was a big thing when I started, definitely not as big as it is now. And then, you know, at 13, I started filming a TV show for the next 4 years. So it's pretty normal for me to be in front of a camera, and it can be a pain in the butt at times, especially when, you know, I'm more of an introverted person. So it does take a little more for me to kind of think about what kind of social media content I want to put out there. But again, it's a very important thing, especially in today's world in the race industry, to put out that kind of content. Like Corey said, you know, sponsors, that's one of the first things they go to and look at is your social media. So if you can grow that and just put out, I mean, it doesn't have to be staged content, like organic things of what you're doing every day. Like whether I'm out on the boat or riding the pit bikes or at the racetrack, you know, just stuff like that you can put out there. But it can be a very positive thing that you can use to, you know, help your career grow.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mia. And moving over to Shelby. Shelby, we've got a few more moments, and same question for you. You have that legacy, you have that name, you have the third generation, and now you are creating your own, separating yourself, but also keeping that legacy, keeping your grandfather proud. I know he definitely is, especially when Ford was relaunching that Bronco, asked him to come out, showed him on that VR headset, that livery that paid homage to him. I cried when I knew all about that. So I know that he had to, you too. But really, how do you navigate being a third generation person, keeping that legacy, keeping that Hall name, but separating yourself, defining who you are and setting it up for the fourth generation?
Well, I think, I mean, on the topic of social media, you know, social media was not a thing during my grandfather's years, during my dad's years. And Corey, like you, I mean, honestly, I didn't start to have any sort of a social media presence until like 2019. So I feel like I'm playing catch up. And thankfully, I think that there has been a shift where we don't necessarily need to have the biggest following to be able to have these relationships, because it's really about the way that we connect with the people who are watching us. So I think, I mean, the biggest thing for me with my family is I'm a female. I'm the only girl. So, I mean, I have a sister, but she's not in off-road. And so my view of what off-road is and the way that I deliver is really different than the way that my family did. And I do a lot on the consumer side, and I have my own business of teaching people off-road skills and vehicular technology skills, how to put the two together and go have a really fun, safe weekend with your everyday driver. And my family was very, very heavy on the competition side. So I get to race and compete, you know, a handful of times a year, which is a lot, but also run a business. And I think that I've been able to learn from my family, and I learn from my peers, and then I get to like put it all together and just be myself and really support and live the life that makes me happy.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, ladies, for joining me. Corey, Mia, Shelby, thank you so much. It is great to have all of these great insights, especially from three different women who come from three different backgrounds, but we're all doing the same thing. I really appreciate this, and keep moving, ladies. We are doing great thing. Alex?
Yeah, yes, I totally agree. I think that was amazing. Ladies, that was an awesome session. Mia, Shelby, Corey, thank you so much. I wish more women would follow your lead. You all are leading the charge. And I wish more women would follow your lead, and then more sponsors come in and support those women and develop very, very long-term lasting relationships. Speaking of long-term lasting relationships, we're now going to queue up Rob Mack and Nate Hunt from Jackson Motorsports, the agency for BFGoodrich, and Caden Mack. And you know, Rob has one of the longest running sponsorships in all of sports, over 30 years with BFGoodrich. And that's every sport out there. I'm talking baseball, football, you name it. He has one of the longest running sponsorships. What we don't often talk about are the nuances of being a brand ambassador. Sometimes when you're racing, you get a flat tire. Sometimes when you're on your way to a sponsorship summit, you get in an accident along the way and you need to multitask. So Rob, where are you right now and what's going on? Real quick, tell us what's happening. And then Tiffany, I'm going to hand it over to you.
I just walked in the door. I went to go run an errand to get some parts, and on the way back home, somebody was in the turn lane to turn right, and they decided they needed to cross over and turn left, and I happened to be next to them, so they kind of sideswiped me a little bit, and you know, we ended up exchanging paperwork and things like that, and you know, obviously here in Las Vegas, the police, you know, it's not that important for them to come, but going to end up having to probably do some more work to try to get it handled, make sure everything goes smoothly.
Well, it says a lot about your dedication to, in the middle of being in an accident, waiting on police to come take a police report, to take the time to do the sponsorship summit. So thank you so much. Now I know why your BFG has kept you on board for over 3 decades. Nate, what do you say about that? And then Tiffany, take over. It's all yours.
No, yeah, we're of course super proud of Rob and super happy to be partner with Rob for over 30 years. It's been a partnership that I don't think you see very often in very many sports at all. Really, all I can think about is Michael Jordan and Nike. Like when I was growing up, Michael Jordan, when you thought of Michael Jordan, you thought of Nike shoes, and you had to have the Nikes if you wanted to play basketball well, if you wanted to jump high. If you wanted to have his fadeaway, you had to have Nike shoes. And that's kind of how I feel about Rob and BFG. Everybody knows Rob is BFG. So if you want to be like Rob Mack, you got to be on BFG tires. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me to be on here. To be on with a legend like Rob and Caden being on here, it's really cool. I'm looking forward to this little segment that we have.
Well, hello, Nate. How are you doing today?
Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
Wonderful. So, Nate, you've been with BFGoodrich for a while. I get a chance to hang out with you all the time when we were at the VIP area at the Mint 400. You also have a good hand into everything that I've done with BFGoodrich as well. So talking about Rob Mack and Caden now, the next generation of that, how does somebody like Rob Mack keep BFGoodrich tires as a partner for 30 years?
I think it's a true partnership. It has to be on both sides. So when you find somebody, when a company like BFGoodrich finds somebody like Rob McCachran, whose values and whose goals and drive all align with what the brand's goals and drive is, it's a natural partnership. So having somebody that, being a performance brand, BFGoodrich is a performance brand. So finding somebody that has the performance and then is able to execute and provide the value that the brand is looking for. When you're an established brand, it's way different than if you're a new brand trying to get your name out there, and brand equity just being in brand awareness and putting a sticker on the truck or talking about it so people find out what it is. BFGoodrich has been involved for over 40 years in off-road racing, so we're an established brand. And when Rob came on, we were already kind of moving forward in that area, but he definitely took us to the next level along with others. But I can't think of another racer driver who's stuck with us for this long. And it's super special to have somebody that carries himself the way he does, not just on the track, but off the track, always a professional, and presents himself as such. He shows up at the track. I don't have to worry about whether Rob has the decals on the truck, or if he has the right logo on his shirt, or if he has something on his hat, or if he says BFGoodrich on the podium, or if he tags BFG in social media. He does it. It's a given. It's not something we have to police. And it's so nice for on this side of the partnership to not have to police that kind of stuff and spend our time on promotion. So yeah, I get to use 2 P words, but yeah, rather than policing, let's promote. And to have somebody like that, so many racers can learn so much from somebody like Rob, who always shows up, always ready to go. And he knows the deliverables in his contract. He knows what's expected of him. And when you start a relationship like this, you always start it with realistic expectations for both sides. And then, of course, on both sides in a true partnership, which is why we've gotten away from the sponsorship word for the most part. In a true partnership, It's both sides. So Rob tries to over deliver what's expected of him realistically, and we should be doing the same thing on the BF Goodrich side. We should be trying to over deliver for him, get him a better tire than he's expecting, promote him more than he was expecting. I think one time we took he and Amber to France for a trip for a global meeting over there. So just little things like that to just enhance the partnership and continue to grow it over 30 years and make it something that's sustainable for both parties.
I like what you said. It's no longer necessarily a sponsorship. It's a partnership. It's a give and give instead of a give and take. And it's really cool to see BF Goodrich, especially on the social media side, really push these athletes, really push your brand ambassadors, your lifestyle ambassadors. And going off of that, I do want to go over to Rob real quick. Rob, hearing everything that Nate just had to say about you, how does that make you feel? Not necessarily as a driver, a racer, but just as a person. He said so much to your character about who you are that has to feel really, really good. And the fact that you can also bring that to your son as well and show him these are the foundation things that you really need to do to keep some partnerships and more so friendships for 30 plus years.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I started racing in the early 80s. My father raced in the early 70s and ended up buying an off-road buggy shop. And that's how I ended up going to work there. And about 1980, in 1980, he asked if I wanted to go off-road racing. And one thing at the time, you know, I was all in. I said, you know, I'm in. And he said, okay, you have to work on the car. If you don't work on the car, then you don't get to race. So once I raced and I fell in love with it, I realized how much work it was, but I also realized how much I love doing it. So, you know, with that being said, it took me, you know, about 3 to 5 years in, I decided, you know, I really want to do this. And, you know, if I could make a living out of it or whatever I could do, but I was so into it, I basically dedicated all the time that I had. I was able to start driving for another team, you know, Walker Evans through Michael Gaughan. And that's really, you know, when I first started learning about, you know, what it takes, sponsor commitments, which, as Nate said, has now turned into more partnerships. For me, the early days, you know, it was about wearing a collared shirt, having a good haircut, and winning races, and then being on TV. Obviously, being old school that I am, and then going through the 40 plus years that I've been racing, 30 years plus with BF Goodrich. First was with BF Goodrich in 1991, but you know, I've really seen the sport change, or motorsport, sponsorship, partnership, that changes all that. You know, there was a time when you know, as the change was happening, I'll use the example, you know, of Travis Pastrana or Brian Deegan showing up, and Travis came in and he was, you know, doing backflips and all that stuff, and then Brian Deegan coming in and being on the podium, working very hard at it. But I remember one instance, you know, in particular, I won the race. Brian Deegan's on the podium with me, but everyone down in the grandstands is going, you know, Deegan, Deegan, Deegan. And between those two guys, I realized that was the changing, honestly, of it's not just about winning the race, you know, being on TV or being on the front page. There's a lot more to it. And that's what both Travis and Brian, amongst others, had brought into the sport, and really was the changing. So, you know, at that time, obviously there's many different ways to think how this works. And some of them are, you know, you don't have to be the winner to get exposure. You know, so as the time has changed, I've tried to change my, you know, what we do and how we do it. You know, being with BF Goodrich for so long, you know, my parents used to teach me, you know, or taught me, you know, surround yourself with people that want to be successful and move forward. And if you do that, you'll be successful as well. And 1990, I was with another tire brand, but I knew where I wanted to be. And thankfully, in 91, I was able to come over to a team that was supported by BF Goodrich, and we've been there ever since. But you know, to expand a little bit on what Nate was saying, it took me a bit to learn, you know, what I needed to do and how to do it. And you know, over time, I appreciate everything that I get in return, not only from BF Goodrich, from other sponsors, but we're continually, and I'm teaching Caden that, and he's paying attention a lot by not only listening to me, but watching. You know, we do a lot of the shows. We go to shows that we're not expected to be at. We're always trying to make appearances, and ultimately, I'm very proud to be part of the BF Goodrich brand, and want to be till I'm done.
I love that. And let's move over to Caden now, since you were just talking about Caden. This is somebody that a lot of young athletes, a lot of young drivers look up to, especially with this new Polaris factory team coming up. And welcome, Caden. You know, you've heard everything that your dad has said. You've heard everything that Nate said. Now you are coming into your own. You are Caden Mack. Talking about that, how are you separating yourself just a little bit? Be like, hey, yes, my dad did all this stuff. Yes, he's the GOAT that some may say, but I'm also here. I want to do this. And you coming up into this generation where social media is around everything. Your dad talked about being on the podium, finishing races, top place, and getting in TV and magazines. That was what he is known. He's taught you all of that for the foundation, but now you've been able to take social media as well and land yourself some great, amazing partnerships.
Yeah, of course. And, there's honestly, not too much for me to say about, these topics, mostly because the people that I learned them from just spoke for, the last 15 minutes between Nate and my dad. That's where I learned about the racing and a lot of the partnership opportunities and such that come with racing. But yeah, kind of making my own, kind of name in that. I think most of that would be, my younger age, from my dad, taken a lot of what he's told me and what I've learned from him, whether just watching him or learning from him, and kind of mixing that into my own kind of cocktail, and trying hard at the social media stuff. It's sometimes, not the easiest thing. I don't totally understand it always, but always trying to work hard and trying to better understand it, and better represent the people that support me. These are all super important things, obviously, but I like the word that Nate said. It's not a sponsorship, it's a partnership, and that's how I view it. Nate's a friend. He's not just a guy that's putting tires on my ride. He's a buddy, and when things go wrong in my life, I call Nate. So that's a piece of this too, is not just calling them when you need something, but building a relationship with these people. Yeah, of course, just for example, BF Goodrich, that's the sticker on the car, but BF Goodrich is not a person. It's a ton of other people working to bring that name what it means today. And that's super important to me. And there's a ton of people that work really hard to make that name what it is today. And, ultimately we're the ones representing it and making all their efforts public and showing everybody what that brand can do and what it's done the last 30 years with my dad. And, the last about 4 with me. I haven't raced on another tire brand, and I want to keep it that way for the length of my career, hopefully a long time. I've been it's proven to me that it's the best in the desert, tire wise by far. I think, some people try to, argue with that, but I think if you look at results, it's pretty obvious. And that's really important to me as a racer, wanting to win races and wanting to, better myself is partnering with people like that. And there's, another that I won't name, but, it's good to keep those people around you and want to keep them around for a long time. So that's my goal and that's my plan. And hopefully, with what Alex is doing here, it's good to let me, even though I'm on this summit, it's good for me to listen to it and learn and honestly better myself, which ultimately ends up bettering the companies that support me, like BFG.
Well, and I agree with you. I've always told that everybody, not only do you represent yourself, you represent the brands, but like you said, BF Goodrich is more than just a brand. It's the people behind it. So not only are you doing that, but you are making sure that they are looked at the best light, make sure that you are. And Caden, I know that social media is coming up for you, and I just had a chance to talk to Shelby Hall. She's a multi-generational off-road racer as well. And with you, that is the same for you. So how are you making sure that the McCachran name is synonymous with winning, is synonymous with off-road racing, and synonymous with BF Goodrich tires?
Yeah, there's kind of no choice when I started racing. My first race was the end of 2018, and it's really not that long ago, and there was no choice. Nobody really told me this, but I put it in my head that, like, if I wasn't winning, then I needed to not be racing, because that's what the McCachrans do in the desert. With my dad, oftenly referred to as the GOAT. I knew that if I didn't hold up to at least somewhere close to that standard, that I shouldn't be racing, and that's what really pushed me forward. And being able to partner with a lot of the people that he's partnered with the last however many years has really boosted my my career. And honestly, just trying to keep that going forward, and hoping for a long career with a lot of these companies.
Wonderful. I do want to head back over to Nate. Nate, Caden was just talking about that he didn't see any other tire brand that he wanted to be with, that when something goes wrong, he contacts you. You're more of a friend too to him than just this. How does that make you feel, knowing that you are so influential in the McCachran family, that not only has Rob been there for 30 plus years, now his son, that is the same exact path that he wants to take because he sees the value in the partnership with BF Goodrich Tires?
Yeah, so I have been looking forward to this part of being able to talk about Caden McCachran because, first of all, I want to say that myself personally, I'm super proud of Caden. I know the brand, BF Goodrich brand, is also proud to be aligned with Caden. And I know he talks about some things he's learned from me and things he's learned from Rob, but I can tell you, Tiffany, that the most I learned in short course racing, because I came in, I knew nothing about it. I learned more from sitting next to Caden in the stands watching his dad race and telling me, oh, he just missed the line, or he could tell if the truck was off a little bit, or they didn't set the gears up right. And even though he was this small little kid, he was paying attention and he was watching. And even though he wasn't out there with the trophy cart kids racing, I could tell early on that this kid knows more about racing for not being a racer than most of the people sitting in the stands. And it was super, super cool to watch Caden growing up, not racing, but watching. And I could tell he watched. And Caden and I have talked about this a lot. Growing up in a big shadow, it's tough. And I heard a little bit about Shelby talking earlier, and having a big name and having a really just bigger than life figure that you're kind of in that shadow. And how do you break out of it? Or do you have to? Or is it okay to be in it and still be able to find yourself and be yourself? And when Caden started racing, yeah, he got kind of put into a vehicle that already had BF Goodrich tires on it. But I can tell you, we've had the conversations, hey man, you don't just get tire sponsorship because you're McCachran. You have to earn your tire sponsorship. And right out of the gate, he was winning. And I'm not going to speak for Polaris, but I've talked to quite a few of those guys, and Caden didn't get that spot on the team because his last name's McCachran. Caden earned that spot by going out to the works races and showing that he was capable, that he was a good driver, he was driven. I went out to one of the races and I have talked to Rob on the phone while Caden was wrenching on his own car. Caden went through and prepped his entire vehicle. He didn't just have Rob's crew doing all the work on the car. He was under there doing it himself. And yeah, sure, Rob was giving some coaching. Sometimes he listens. Sometimes I think he always listens. Sometimes he agrees. Sometimes he doesn't. And I'm sure Rob's smiling over there. But it's kind of fun to see him argue a little bit because we do spend a lot of time together, and it's really awesome to see the father and son dynamic. I can remember when my father and I would talk, there was a lot of disagreement, but even though I may have disagreed, I still always heard what my dad had to say. And later on, you remember that. And that's all I can say to Rob is keep talking to him, even though you might argue with him and fight with him a little bit. But he does hear it because it sinks in. And later on in life, you never know when sometimes that memory pops up of, my dad said that, and I should have listened back then. But I know he listens. I know he watches. But I also know he's a driven young man and a talented young man. And this being able to race for a vehicle manufacturer like Polaris, I think that's a really cool deal. I know it's got to be frustrating for somebody who's used to doing all the work on their vehicle because they know every little single part of it. But learning how to work with a vehicle manufacturer, I know Rob used to work with Ford back in the day with the Rough Rider program and probably other manufacturers. I don't want to speak for him, but when you getting vehicle manufacturers involved in off-road racing is so important today, and we need it. We need more. We need to get Ford and Chevy and Toyota and all these vehicle manufacturers back heavily involved. And I know that they play around a little bit, which is great. but the UTV manufacturers being involved is really, really good. We need to keep that. And so when you're racing for a team like that and for a manufacturer, they may have things that they want to try or do or put on the car. Maybe something that isn't necessarily the best thing for racing, but it's the best thing for a production vehicle. And that's what you're trying to show off and prove. And so sometimes it might not be exactly the way you would do it as a racer if it was your own car, but to learn how to race for a manufacturer like that and learn how to work with what you have. You can only race what you have. And I remember Rob talking to me early on when I started with Jackson and working with BFGoodrich was the hardest thing to do out there on the race course is to know when it's just not your day. And you're just gonna have to settle for a finish, and it might be a top 10, it might be a top 5, but you just know it's not your day. The truck's not quite right, or something happened, luck's not on your side, and to know it's not your day and not to push so hard and wreck the car or DNF. And that's another thing that I think Rob is underappreciated, maybe not underappreciated, but not as well known for, just because he wins so much, is just his finishing rate. And I know he hates talking about it because, whatever, but he finishes races, and he championships were huge back in the day. And I know it's kind of gone more towards winning the big races in different series maybe, but knowing your vehicle, knowing what you have and listening to it and being able to push it hard enough to give yourself a chance to win. But in order to do that, of course, you have to finish. So I think Caden's opportunities are bright right now. I think he's got a bright future. I think if he applies himself and continues to drive and not just get comfortable, I think he can go on to do great things. And I'm really, really excited to see what Caden's got in the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Nate. Now heading over to Rob. Rob, a question I know that everybody that is watching really wants to know: how does somebody get partnerships like BFGoodrich Tires or like Rockstar? Those are two big ones out there. Everybody wants that energy drink deal. Everybody wants that tire deal. How did you do that back in the day when we didn't have social media?
Well, really, for me, and the way it happened for me was, because it wasn't available in those days, or it wasn't there. It's just, I was going to the track, I was being there, I was being consistent. I was trying to win races, winning championships, and then whenever a brand or someone that approached me that I wanted to be involved with, or that I approached, I basically, I really treated my motorsport racing career as a job, as a business, and woke up every morning trying to figure out how to get better. When I got associated with BFGoodrich, there was a lot of other things that they asked me to do, and as Nate said earlier, it's I've always tried to give back more than I'm giving. You have to pay attention constantly, and for me, it's like I've been saying, it's treating it like a job, treating it like a business. And, I think that's been really the biggest part of my success is with any brand that I've been involved with. There's ups and downs, thankfully, with BFGoodrich and that relationship lasting so long, a lot of that's happened because, I realize that their effort and their dedication that they're putting into it, whether it's tire testing and wanting to win and wanting to be the top. So, part of this relationship being for so long is because of them doing that. Other brands and stuff that I've been involved with, Fox Shocks, Vision Wheel, most all of my my partnerships have been long term. I like to, and I think the industry knows that too. I feel that they don't, if someone else wants to approach me that's competing with one of my brands, like they don't approach me because they know my loyalty to the people that have supported me over the years. And ultimately, that's what I can suggest to anyone that wants to have long-term partnerships is to treat them well, to always be professional, to be on time, to give back more than you give, over deliver. It's not just about winning races. It's about all the other stuff. It's about the stuff, that you don't want to do. It's, you don't want to go to a show to represent or you're tired. And it's, Caden knows, man, we go to every show that we can. We try to attend anything and everything that we can. And that's, you know, whether your brands that are supporting you want you to be there or not, when they hear about it later, that's, you know, more insurance to them, if you want to say it, that, hey, investing in this guy, he's doing more than just going to the races. He's doing more than we just require. And I guess for anyone coming up now, it's, you know, it's everything. You know, sometimes people say, hey, it's not about, you know, it's not about winning anymore. It's not about, you know, being on the cover of a magazine. It's not about being a TV. Well, I got to say, it's about all of that. And yes, you have to pay attention to the new avenues for getting exposure, and you definitely need to pay attention to that and get that. But don't, no, for me specifically, and teaching Caden, don't neglect all the rest of the stuff, because as a whole, that's, in my opinion, what keeps you going with your partnerships for a long time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rob. And Caden, I just want to finish up this panel with you. We've got about 3 minutes, and what your dad said, you know, he's given you tons of advice. Really, what is the best piece of advice that your father has given you to maintain that 30-year relationship, partnership, friendship with the companies that you have? Like he said, trust is a big thing. Being able to have that and know that your partners trust you and vice versa. So what's this one piece of advice that always sticks to you that your father has said, this is how you keep that partnership alive?
I think honestly, a lot of this, you know, as times have changed, that we've kind of a little bit, the last 4 years of me being around him a lot, racing and understanding it like him, we've learned together. And I think the biggest thing we've learned in the last 4 years, and he knew it before, but what we've seen really beneficial is what he just said, is doing the extra credit. I guess you could do the bare minimum, and you might keep somebody around for a couple of years, but when you go above and beyond, not just once, but every day, you're going to make these people, you know, happy with you and want to keep you around. And that's super important. Like he just said, going to all these shows and, you know, shaking hands and meeting people. It's not just about racing, and it's not just about social media. It's we're humans, and we're on a, you know, a spinning rock through the galaxies right now. And, you know, the relationships we build with each other are ultimately going to help you more than anything else. Obviously you need to represent these people good and represent their relationships properly. But yeah, doing the extra credit is super important.
I'm
and
sorry, I didn't
it's
quite catch that.
Wonderful.
Siri
Well,
talking to you, Rob.
oh,
Yeah.
no, I think something popped in on here. You're all good, Caden. I agree with you. It's keeping those relationships, doing more, you know, under deliver, over promise. We've always heard that. You are a great representative of not only Polaris for their factory team, BFGoodrich, of course, for the McCachran name. You know, it was really cool to hear those stories of Nate. You've done great things. So gentlemen, thank you so much for everything. Nate, Rob, Caden, it was wonderful to chat with you guys. I'm thankful as well to be a part of that BFGoodrich family. One day I'll get down to the 1,000. One day I'll come pit for you guys. I'm looking forward to all of that. So gentlemen, thank you so much for all of that. And I know that Alex is about to hop back on. We're going to talk about a few things for going viral. So Alex, what do you have for us?
Right on. Well, thank you for that. That was great. And but before I do the next session, I have one real quick question for Rob Mack. Rob, you could have raced anything. Why did you race off-road? You could have gone into NASCAR if you wanted to, but you stayed with off-road, and you're the most dedicated racer out there in off-road. Real quick, and we do have another session here in a minute. Why not NASCAR?
Well, when the truck series started, I did that a little bit, and I realized it ain't no fun just going left-hand turns. So, you know, I fell in love with off-road, like I said, in the early 80s, and it's always changing, always evolving. The courses are changing, and the scenery is much better than just going around four corners and a wall. So,
Amen.
I love racing off-road.
Amen. Well, that's why we're here today. We're at the California 300 out in Barstow at /X Ranch Cafe, enjoying the beauty of the desert. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. Tiffany, that was great.